Hi, lovelies. Welcome to Vintage Mike Tales, where stories come alive and emotions hit deep. Today we're diving into a heartfelt journey of love, loss, and finding your way back to the one who truly matters. I'm so glad you're here, so let's get started. Houston pulsed with heat and motion, the kind that wrapped around you and whispered, "You're alive whether you like it or not." Neon signs glowed in the wet pavement after a light rain. Cars hummed by and music spilled faintly from a nearby bar. The sound of a city that never slept, even when hearts broke inside it. Frank Campbell sat at a table near the window of a downtown cafe, swirling his whiskey glass like it might answer a question he hadn't been brave enough to ask. Across from him, his old friend and business partner Ethan was still talking about new property developments, investors, profit margins, words that used to light Frank up, but tonight they fell flat. He wasn't listening. He hadn't really been listening to anyone since Claire walked out 2 months ago, the woman he'd thought he'd marry. She'd left him for another man, his business partner once, his best friend once. Now even the air felt heavy with ghosts. Frank forced a smirk. "Do you ever notice how the city smells different after rain?" Ethan frowned. "You sound like a poet who just lost his muse." "Maybe I did," Frank muttered, setting the glass down. The ice clinked like punctuation to a sentence that didn't need finishing. Outside, the street glowed under the amber of streetlights, and that's when he saw it. A small bakery across the street, its window fogged slightly. The words Raymond's Cakes and Confections curved in gold script. Inside, a woman with warm brown skin stood behind the counter, frosting a cake with careful hands. Flour dusted her wrist. Her dark curls were tied up messily, a few strands catching the light like threads of midnight silk. And when she smiled, not at anyone, just at her work, something in him shifted. It was ridiculous. He didn't even know her name, but he couldn't look away. "Let's get dessert," Ethan said suddenly, following Frank's gaze. "That place is new, right?" Frank tried to shrug it off. Come on, man. "You look like you could use some sugar." Frank almost refused, but curiosity, or maybe something deeper, tugged at him. "Fine." They crossed the street, the bell above the bakery door chiming softly as they stepped inside. The air hit him like warmth, sugar, vanilla, butter, and something sweetly intoxicating he couldn't name. The woman behind the counter looked up, and the world stopped moving. "Welcome to Raymond's," she said, her voice soft but full of life. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" Her eyes were deep brown, alive with warmth and curiosity. She had a way of making the small shop feel like it existed, just for whoever walked in. Ethan immediately launched into small talk. "What's your bestseller?" She grinned. "Depends who's asking. You look like a lemon tart guy. And you," her gaze landed on Frank, "you look like someone who doesn't know what he wants." Ethan laughed. Frank didn't. He just watched her, intrigued. "You're not wrong," he said quietly. Her lips curved, but her eyes softened. "That's most people, honey. Life tastes better when you stop playing safe." Frank blinked. He hadn't expected a bakery owner to sound like she'd just read him in one glance. "You always psychoanalyze your customers, or am I just special?" "Depends if you leave a tip," she teased. Ethan ordered. Frank didn't. He stood at the glass counter, staring at the rows of cakes, chocolate ganache, bourbon caramel, strawberry cream, and said the first thing that came to him. "Surprise me?" Her smile deepened. "My favorite kind of order." She returned a few minutes later with a slice of cake drizzled in warm bourbon glaze. "Sugar with a little fire," she said. "Like life." Frank took a bite and almost forgot how to speak. It was absurd. He'd eaten at 5-star restaurants across the country, but nothing compared to this. "Damn," he murmured. "That's dangerous?" she offered, one brow raised. He met her gaze. Addictive. Their eyes held for a moment longer than was polite. Then Ethan broke the spell, joking about buying a whole cake for his office, but Frank stayed silent, watching the woman with the kind of fascination he hadn't felt in years. When they left, she waved. "See you around, Mr. Addictive." He smiled despite himself. "You might." That night, Frank couldn't sleep. The taste of sugar and bourbon lingered on his tongue, and her laughter replayed in his head. The city outside his penthouse was quiet, the skyline sharp and glowing, but everything felt strangely hollow. He poured himself another drink, tried to work, failed, and finally gave up. His mind kept drifting back to her, the way she looked alive, like she'd built her world with her own 2 hands. He couldn't remember the last time he felt that kind of joy doing anything. He picked up his phone, looked at her business card. Abigail Raymond, owner and pastry chef. 2 days later, Frank was back at the bakery. He told himself it was for a client gift, but Abigail didn't look convinced. "Client, huh?" she said, dusting her apron. "Must be lucky." He smirked. "He's got good taste." "You're bad at lying," she said easily, pulling a tray of cupcakes from the oven. The scent filled the air, chocolate, espresso, vanilla heaven. Frank leaned against the counter, watching her work. "You do this every day? 6 days a week?" "Sometimes 7, she said. "I like watching people's faces when they taste something that makes their day better. It's simple, but real." He nodded slowly. "You make it sound like a calling." She looked up at him then, eyes shining with something soft. "Maybe it is." "You?" He hesitated. "Real estate. Big projects. Big money." He tried to sound confident, but it came out tired. She smiled. "Sounds lonely." Her words hit deeper than they should have. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But the view's nice." Abigail grinned. "Views don't keep you warm, Frank." He froze. "Did I tell you my name?" "It was on your credit card, Mr. Campbell." "Don't look so spooked. I pay attention." He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "You're something else, Abigail Raymond." "You just figured that out?" Over the next few weeks, Frank found himself stopping by more often. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes with no excuse at all. They'd talk about everything. His work, her childhood favorite movies, the music she played when she baked. And slowly the walls around his heart began to crumble. She was color and warmth where he was steel and restraint. When she laughed, he wanted to be the reason. When she touched his hand just once, passing him a box, it felt like fire. One evening, she invited him to stay after closing. The rain drummed gently outside as she wiped down the counters. The city lights glowing through the window. "You ever get tired of being strong all the time?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, unsure how to answer. She continued, voice soft. "You walk in here like the world owes you nothing, but your eyes, they look like someone who keeps losing things they never talk about." Frank exhaled, shoulders heavy. "I'm not good at feeling," she finished for him. He smiled faintly. "That obvious?" Abigail stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the sugar on her skin, only to someone who's felt the same. For a heartbeat, the air between them pulsed with electricity. He could hear her breathing, slow and steady, and he wanted to reach out, to taste the moment before it vanished. Instead, she took his hand and placed it over hers, flour-dusted and warm. "Sometimes," she said softly, "you just need to let someone hold the pieces." He swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can." She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the golden light. "Then start small." And then she kissed him. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was slow, hesitant, tasting like sugar and rain and everything he'd been afraid to want again. When she pulled back, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You taste like trouble." Frank's lips curved faintly. "Maybe you need both." Outside, thunder rolled low over Houston, and for the first time in a long time, Frank didn't feel empty. He felt alive. Houston shimmered beneath the dusk, the skyline painted gold and violet as the sun melted into the horizon. The air hummed with the promise of rain, warm, heavy, electric. Inside Raymond's cakes and confections, the soft glow of Edison bulbs spilled across polished counters and trays of pastries cooling near the window. Frank leaned against the counter, sleeves rolled up, watching Abigail wipe down the last bit of powdered sugar from a tray. They had fallen into a rhythm, coffee together before her doors opened, dinners after she closed. Their laughter had filled late nights, and somehow she'd found a way into the cracks he'd spent years sealing shut. And yet something about her made it impossible to stay numb. Tonight the bakery was quiet, except for the slow hum of jazz from the radio. Abigail glanced up, smiling as she noticed him watching her. "Are you ever going to help?" she teased. "Or do you just plan on standing there looking expensive?" He chuckled. "I'd help, but I'm told I ruin good things when I touch them." Her movements paused just for a second. She turned, drying her hands. "Who told you that?" "Experience." There was truth in his voice, the kind that didn't need to be explained. She studied him for a long moment, then walked over and reached for his hand. "Then maybe you've just been touching the wrong things." Their eyes met, and something hot and dangerous passed between them. He caught her wrist gently. "You should be careful saying things like that." "Why? Because I might believe you." Her smile was soft, playful, but her pulse betrayed her. "Then believe me," she whispered. And before he could think, before fear could crawl back into his chest, he kissed her. It wasn't tentative like their first. This was need. Fire. A taste that burned slow and sweet as her hands slid up his shirt, her breath catching against his mouth. The jazz track crackled, the city hummed outside, and for a moment time didn't exist. When they finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against his. "You don't always have to be in control, Frank," she said softly. "Some things fall apart so better things can find you." He closed his eyes. "I'm not sure I'd know what to do if something stayed." They began to orbit each other in ways neither understood, but both needed. Days blurred into nights, breakfasts shared before the city stirred, stolen kisses in the hallway, and laughter echoing through the bakery as sugar dusted their hands and hearts. Houston became their backdrop, late-night drives under glowing streetlights, hands intertwined as they walked along the Buffalo Bayou, dancing barefoot on her rooftop under fairy lights she'd strung herself. He had money, she had warmth, and somehow they found a rhythm that made both feel like luxury. But beneath the sweetness, shadows moved. Frank's past still whispered at night. He'd wake from dreams of betrayal, heart racing, afraid to trust the peace he'd found. Abigail would stir beside him, touch his chest gently and say nothing, because she knew sometimes silence healed more than words. Still, she could feel it, that hesitation in his touch, that unspoken distance when love came too close. One evening after closing, she sat across from him at a small table in the bakery. A single candle flickered between them, the scent of vanilla and bourbon in the air. "Tell me something true," she said softly. He looked up. "I've told you plenty. Not about numbers. About you." He hesitated, eyes shadowed. "Truth is, every time I start to care about someone, I end up losing them. So I stopped trying." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then why me?" He met her gaze, steady, raw. "Because you make me forget how to be careful." Something in her chest tightened. "And when you remember—" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Their love deepened, but it was the kind that burned too close to the flame. He was all restraint and reason. She was all emotion and instinct. Together they were beauty and disaster waiting to happen. And then came the gala. It was a charity event for local businesses, hosted by the same corporate circle Frank belonged to. Polished suits, empty smiles, champagne flutes raised like trophies. Abigail had been nervous but excited when he invited her. She wore a sleek emerald dress that turned heads, her curls cascading down her shoulders, confidence glowing off her like light. When they entered together, murmurs followed. Frank felt it, the subtle judgment from his colleagues, the whispers about the real estate mogul and the bakery girl. He ignored them, focusing only on her laughter, until he saw her, Claire, his ex-fiancée, standing by the bar, glass of wine in hand, looking every bit the ghost he'd tried to forget. Abigail felt him tense immediately. "Who's that?" she asked quietly. He swallowed. "Someone who doesn't matter anymore." But it was too late. Claire had already approached, wearing a smirk that twisted something inside him. "Frank," she purred, "you look happy. Didn't think I'd see that again." His jaw tightened. "Claire, not now." Her gaze slid to Abigail. "So this is the reason you never came back to your senses. How quaint." Abigail's expression didn't change, but Frank could feel the hurt radiating from her. He tried to diffuse it, but Claire's words kept cutting. "Careful, darling," Claire added, brushing his arm as she passed. "Some men never stop keeping their options open." Abigail froze. When Claire disappeared into the crowd, Abigail turned to him, voice low but shaking. "Is that true?" Frank's eyes flashed. "No, she's just jealous." "All right." The music swelled around them, laughter and clinking glasses filling the silence between their words. "Abigail," he said, stepping closer, "you have no idea how much you mean to me." "Then say it," she whispered. "Say what this is. Say you're not just—" He faltered. "I can't promise forever." The words hit her like a slap. Outside, the rain had started soft at first, then relentless. They stood beneath the overhang of the hotel, the city lights blurring through the downpour. Her makeup ran slightly, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "I don't need a promise, Frank, I just need the truth. I don't know how to give more than this," he said, voice breaking. "Every time I think I've built something real, it falls apart. I don't want to destroy what we have." She shook her head. "You're not protecting me, you're protecting yourself." He looked away, jaw clenched. "Maybe I am." Her breath trembled. "You can't keep me halfway. Frank, I deserve more than the pieces you're willing to risk." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Don't," she whispered. "Because if you touch me right now, I won't leave, and I need to." The rain poured harder, soaking through her dress, her hair, her heart. "Abigail, please, I love you," she said suddenly. Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. "And that's the problem. Because I can't love someone who's already preparing to lose me." He stood frozen, rain streaming down his face, unable to breathe. She turned and walked into the storm, heels splashing against puddles, her silhouette fading into the city that had witnessed too many heartbreaks. Frank didn't chase her. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But fear kept his feet anchored. As thunder rumbled overhead, he whispered into the night, "I'm not built for forever." And somewhere beyond the sound of rain, her voice echoed back in his memory, "Then you'll never know what home feels like." The city lights flickered, her vision blurred with tears, and for the first time in years, Frank felt the weight of his own emptiness, the silence that follows when love slips through trembling fingers. He had been right about one thing. He didn't know how to keep what was real. But what he hadn't realized was that losing her would teach him what forever really meant. Houston never looked the same after she left. By day it still buzzed, glass towers catching the sun, the air shimmering with heat. But to Frank everything felt colder, empty in ways that didn't make sense. Even the skyline looked lonelier, like the city itself had lost its rhythm. 2 months had passed since that night in the rain. 2 months since he'd watched her walk away, heels splashing through puddles, while every part of him screamed to stop her. But fear was louder. He thought the silence would fade. That work, whiskey, and the next real estate deal would fill the void. It didn't. Every street, every smell, every sound reminded him of her. The jazz she loved drifted from passing cars. He'd catch the scent of vanilla from a bakery downtown and turn instinctively, expecting to see her. But it was never Abigail. It was never her. Frank's penthouse used to feel like an accomplishment. Wide windows overlooking the city, minimalist design, every piece expensive and deliberate. Now it just echoed. He spent nights on the balcony, glass in hand, staring at the skyline. He told himself he was fine, that he'd survived worse. But some nights, the quiet ones, when the rain tapped against the glass and the air smelled faintly of sugar, from somewhere below, he'd break. He'd pull out his phone, scroll to her number, and stop just short of calling. Sometimes he'd draft a text, "I miss you. I was wrong. I love you too." Then delete it. Every time, because what could he possibly say to the woman he pushed, away just when she needed him to stay? One Friday evening, Ethan dropped by, concerned. "Man, you look like hell," he said, setting down a bottle of bourbon. "You working yourself to death or just practicing for it?" Frank gave a humorless laugh. "What's the difference?" Ethan studied him. "You still thinking about her?" "Every damn day," Frank muttered. "But it doesn't matter. She's better off." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Frank looked up, annoyed. "You weren't there. You didn't see how she looked at me that night. Like she was finally realizing I wasn't the man she thought I was." Ethan leaned back. "Or maybe she saw the man you could be. And you ran because that scared the hell out of you." Frank didn't respond. He just stared into his glass until the reflection blurred. That night, unable to sleep, he drove. The city glowed in streaks of color through the rain, gold, blue, red. His windshield wipers moved in rhythm with his heartbeat. Without meaning to, he ended up near her bakery. The sign Raymond's Cakes and Confections still shone faintly in the drizzle. Through the fogged window, he saw her silhouette, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, laughter spilling from her mouth as she handed a slice of cake to a man sitting at the counter. The sight cut through him like glass. He parked half a block away, engine idling, unable to look away. The man leaned in closer. Abigail smiled, the same soft, genuine smile that used to belong to him. Jealousy wasn't what he felt. It was loss, the kind that burned from the inside out. For the first time, Frank realized what home meant and how it felt to lose it. He drove away, heart pounding, the city blurring in streaks of neon and rain. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He replayed everything. The first night he saw her through that bakery window, the first time she said his name, the way she'd whispered, "You don't earn love, Frank, you return it." He'd built skyscrapers, owned penthouses, but none of it meant anything now. What use was success if the only thing that mattered had walked away because he was too afraid to believe in love? By sunrise, he was outside her bakery again, this time on purpose. The city was quiet, streets glistening from last night's rain. She was inside, arranging pastries in the display case. When she looked up and saw him through the window, She froze. Frank stepped closer, water dripping from his hair, his shirt half-buttoned from the drive. He didn't speak. He just stood there, raw, tired, lost. She hesitated before unlocking the door. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice soft but firm. "I know," he exhaled. "But I couldn't not be." "Frank," she started. "I saw you last night," he admitted. "With him?" Her jaw tightened. "You have no right." "I know I don't," he interrupted. "I just needed to see you, to see if you were happy." Her eyes searched his face, the exhaustion, the sincerity. "And what if I was?" He swallowed. "Then I'd thank God someone didn't screw it up like I did." Abigail looked down, fighting the emotion rising in her chest. "You can't keep doing this, Frank. Showing up when it's convenient. I spent weeks trying to move on, convincing myself you meant what you said." "I did mean it," he said quickly, "but it was fear talking, not truth." "Fear doesn't undo pain," she whispered. "You don't get to walk back into my life because you finally feel it." "I'm not asking for that," he said, voice trembling. "I just needed you to know I'm sorry. For everything. For being too proud to admit I was scared to need someone like you." The silence between them stretched. Rain began to fall again, light, steady, rhythmic. Abigail's eyes softened, but her voice stayed guarded. "Frank, you can't fix everything with an apology." "I don't want to fix it," he said, stepping closer. "I just don't want to lose the one thing that made me feel alive." Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. He took a slow breath. "I keep thinking about that night, the gala, the rain, the way you walked away. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the truth is, I was just too damn scared of how much I loved you." The words hung in the air like thunder. Abigail's eyes glistened. "Don't say that, Frank, not unless you mean it." "I do," he said quietly. "I meant it the moment I kissed you in this place and realized I'd never be the same again." She looked away, tears threatening. "You don't know how hard it was for me not to call you, to not look for you in every crowd. You made me believe in something real, and then you took it away like it was nothing." "It wasn't nothing," he said, his voice breaking. "It was everything. I just didn't realize it until you were gone." A customer entered, the bell chiming softly, breaking the tension. Abigail wiped her eyes quickly, regaining composure. "I have to work," she said. Frank nodded, backing toward the door. "I won't bother you again," he murmured. "But if you ever wonder, I'm still here, just learning how to be the man you saw in me." He turned and walked out into the rain, his shoes splashing against the pavement. Abigail stood frozen behind the counter, watching him fade into the mist. Something inside her cracked, not with pain this time, but with longing. That night she closed the bakery early. The air still smelled like sugar and cinnamon. She found herself standing at the window, staring at the city beyond. Alive, glittering, unpredictable. Part of her wanted to let him go completely. But another part, the part that still dreamed, whispered that maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about showing up again and again, even when it hurt. She didn't know what to do with that thought yet. So she held it, quietly, carefully. Meanwhile, across the city, Frank sat in his car overlooking the skyline. The radio played faintly, a jazz tune that reminded him of her. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about what came next. Not the next deal, not the next move, not the next woman, just her. The sound of her laugh, the way her eyes softened when she looked at him like he wasn't broken. He closed his eyes and whispered into the night, "I'll find my way back to you, even if it takes everything I have." The wind carried his words into the city, through the streets, past the lights, down to the little bakery where Abigail Raymond locked up for the night and stood alone, heart caught between memory and hope. And somewhere in the space between them, love still lived. Wounded, waiting, unspoken. The Houston skyline shimmered like 1,000 scattered stars, neon reflections bleeding into the rain-slick streets below. Frank Campbell stood on the sidewalk, jacket damp, heart racing. Every fiber of him ached with one truth he could no longer deny. He had to fight for Abigail. 2 months of silence had taught him more than years of success ever could. Money, deals, accolades, none of it mattered without her. Not really. She wasn't just someone to love. She was home. And he had spent weeks wandering Houston, as if the city itself was empty, only realizing with every passing day that her absence had hollowed him out. Tonight he would show her. Abigail Raymond was closing her bakery. The air smelled faintly of caramel and vanilla, the warm hum of the oven fading into quiet. She wiped down the counters, her hands tired but steady. The door chimed and she glanced up. "Frank?" Her voice was cautious. He smiled, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. "Hi," he said simply. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, her heart twisting. Every time he shows up, my walls crumble. But she stepped aside, letting him enter. The bakery was warm, glowing in golden light, candles flickering on tables for ambiance. Frank walked in, taking it all in, as if memorizing every detail, the polished counters, the scent of sugar and butter, the way the light caught the dust in the air. "I've been coming here a lot," he said softly. "Not just for cake. I needed to be near you, even if I didn't know how to say it." Abigail swallowed hard. "Frank, I know I hurt you," he said, stepping closer. "I pushed you away because I was afraid. Afraid I'd ruin what we had. Afraid I wasn't enough. But I see now I was wrong. You are everything I want, Abigail, and I'm done hiding behind fear." Her chest tightened. "You don't know how long I've waited to hear you say that." "Then wait no more," he murmured, reaching for her hand. It was warm, flour-dusted, trembling slightly. "I want to be everything for you. Not perfect, not invincible. Just honest and present. I want us." Abigail studied him, the wet hair clinging to his forehead, the raw honesty in his eyes, the way he seemed almost fragile yet fiercely determined. She realized something important. He had changed. Not in his wealth or power, but in his heart. He was no longer running. She stepped closer. "Frank, I love you, but you need to understand, love isn't enough if you don't fight for it." "I will fight," he said firmly, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'll fight until I can't anymore. I'll fight for every day I get to be with you." Her lips curved into a small, trembling smile. "Then we start again, but on equal terms, honesty, trust, and no running." He nodded. "Agreed, and this time I promise no fear will stand in our way." The next few weeks were transformative. Frank arrived early at the bakery, helping her set up displays, clean counters, and even decorate cakes. He was clumsy at first, frosting smeared on his fingers, a splash of chocolate on his shirt, but Abigail laughed, a sound so full of life it made him forget everything else. They danced in the kitchen while the radio played jazz, flour coating their hands like snow. He watched her laugh, feel alive, and realized that these moments were worth more than all his penthouses combined. Houston mirrored their love. Glowing streets for their late-night walks, soft rain for stolen kisses under umbrellas, neon reflections dancing across puddles as if the city itself celebrated their reunion. Yet despite the sweetness, Frank knew the ultimate test had yet to come. He had to prove fully and irreversibly that he was willing to give up everything for her, even the life he had painstakingly built. One night he disappeared for hours, leaving Abigail worried. When she finally found him, he returned not with excuses but with action. He had transformed the rooftop above her bakery. Twinkling fairy lights framed the space, candles flickered in mason jars, and a small speaker played the soft strains of jazz. Flowers climbed trellises, petals drifting in the gentle wind. It was intimate, magical, a world crafted for just the two of them. When she stepped onto the rooftop, her breath caught. "Frank, this is home," he said simply. "This is where you belong. Not in some penthouse or big office, not as a dream I can't reach. Here with me. I want to build something real with you. Everything else is secondary." Her eyes glistened. She took a step closer. "I've waited for this, for you to finally see what we could be together." And now, Frank dropped to one knee, hands trembling. "Abigail Raymond, I don't promise perfect. I don't promise easy, but I promise you'll never have to question if you're loved. Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, the city held its breath. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming. "You're late," she whispered through a laugh that was half sob, half joy. "But I've been waiting." He smiled, shaking slightly, and slipped the ring onto her finger. They embraced, the lights of Houston shimmering around them, a city alive with love and second chances. The wedding was intimate, held on a rooftop overlooking the skyline. Friends and family gathered. But for Frank and Abigail, it was just about the two of them. He couldn't stop staring at her, the way her dark curls caught the sunlight, the warmth in her eyes, the smile that had haunted him for months. He pressed a kiss to her temple during their vows. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know exactly how much I love you," he murmured. "And I'll spend mine loving you back," she whispered, her voice steady, unwavering. That evening, after the last guest had gone and the city lights twinkled like distant stars, they sat together on their rooftop. The hum of Houston's nightlife surrounded them, the faint jazz from a nearby bar, the distant laughter of strangers, the occasional horn of a car. Frank held her close, breathing in her scent, sugar, vanilla, and home. "I don't ever want to forget what it felt like to lose you," he said quietly. "You won't," she replied, head resting against his chest, "because now we're choosing each other. Every day, no fear. No running." He kissed her hair, holding her tighter. "And this time I won't let anything take you away from me." She smiled against him, whispering, "Then we start forever." And somewhere in the heartbeat of Houston, the city seemed to exhale, alive and vibrant, a witness to a love that had fought through fear, betrayal, and loss, only to find its home where it truly belonged. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of love, hope, and second chances. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a story. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your dreams alive.